Hello and welcome everyone to LCS Academy. My name is Eric Desrux Beltran, followed by my co-caster. Joining me right here, it is Cole, Coco the Dragon Damley. And, we're almost at the end of the regular season now, and it's a very heavy situation going on in the middle of the pack.
Yeah, and a very heavy one it is. We have a four-way tie for 6th place, and that is a position where it's going to be absolutely crucial for us to determine that seeding because of the tier 1 tournaments of the amateur series going forward. We have the tier 1s that are going to be happening with the 7th and 8th place teams that will be wrapping up in the academy, and then the 9th and 10th place positions are going to be going to that second tier 2. So just to recap on how we got to this chaotic place, we have to look back on last week.
Yeah, last week was quite the situation, though. The brackets really didn't move that much. A lot of teams doing battle here. I mean, what we're seeing right now, FlyQuest versus TSM, this is another one of the competitive areas within this bracket, but going all over the place, really. TL staying undefeated, CLG having a hard time finding those wins, and meanwhile, FlyQuest, Immortals, Hunter Thieves, they're all dancing around that middle of the pack area.
Yeah, and we don't really have a determined favorite going out of these tiebreakers at the moment. Dignitas has been struggling. Their couple of wins have been more of the opponent's errors rather than their own efforts and volitions, where Evil Geniuses has had shining moments, but it's individuals that have been dragging them down. And of course, the key team out of all of this as well as Golden Guardians Academy, who has shown in the tier 2 tournaments already, which just happened a few days ago.
Yeah, so far, so good. Take a look at this match right now. 100 Thieves Academy, Dignitas. We're getting into the teams that are going to play today, and we're talking about what's on the line. We've been talking about those tier 1 tournaments. We need a little more info to really get what's going on with this new season of Academy.
Yeah, and it's a really confusing bit for a number of reasons, because it gives this odd incentive of needing to do better so you do not get punished going into those tier 1 tournaments, but it's not something that really rewards the winners. Like, yes, Team Liquid has been dominating, Cloud9 has been as well, but it's those question marks for the 3rd and 4th place with FlyQuest and 100 Thieves right now, and then Immortals tied up with them in that 4th position, where we start to ask, what improvements can we make going forward and into the summer season? Because we're only in February right now, and it feels like we're already just cranking through the season nonstop, and there's no real end goal in sight for a lot of these teams.
Yeah, and now every win is really going to matter that much more. We talked about that 4-way tie coming into 6th place, as well as the 2-way tie going into 4th place. So with all these teams being so close, you have a lot of 2-4 records, you have a lot of 3-3 records. This is really going to count this week. It's really going to be a big deal to be able to get these wins.
And I think it's also the best place to sort of reiterate now that even though there was sort of a question on like team goals, it really implies on sort of individual goals as well, saying, all right, we need to make these tiebreakers happen. And when I'm looking at those teams that are sitting in those dire straits, you have to look at those individuals to step up. Mystiques on Evil Geniuses. I'm looking at the entirety of Dignitas Academy, Acadian and Lorlo specifically. And then, of course, Golden Guardians, who, as you can see, has had some improvements here or there. Their team fighting is starting to sort of make some leaps and bounds, but their drafting has still come into question every now and then. And of course, with the new information that they've had shown going up against amateur teams like Solafide and Mirage, maybe that intel could bite them in the back.
Yeah, we will have to see as we do start heading into this week of play. And again, the stakes are as high as it gets. Starting off today, it will be Dignitas versus Immortals, and that is a fight for the standings, really. I mean, that is Dig desperately needing a win to be able to stay into playoffs contention.
Yeah, and of course, we're going to be sort of leaping off of a more relieved game of Team Liquid versus CLG, where we're going to see if CLG can be another upset. They took a game against Cloud9 Academy. Can they take another win away from the Giants in the top seed of Team Liquid? Could possibly happen. And with that, 100 Thieves and FlyQuest are also one of those tiebreaker situations that we can either drag down the grouping of the lineup a little bit more, or maybe we start to stretch out the gap between 4th and 6th place.
And I mean, that's an interesting one to watch as well, because now we do have Luger coming in for 100 Thieves. So yeah, the Turkish player coming in from the TCL, we want to see how he's going to perform for this roster.
Yeah, and it's something that is really going to be needed for 100 Thieves as well. We can go in a little bit more in depth once we get to that matchup, but just to touch up on GG versus TSM Academy, it's that same sort of strategy of having to break the ties a little bit farther out, and then wrapping up the day with Cloud9 versus Evil Geniuses. A nice cup of tea to relax ourselves and unwind for the next day to come.
So yeah, a lot of action taking place here today and a lot of high stakes. I mean, 6th place versus 4th place, 3rd place versus 4th place, and 6th place versus 6th place. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of wacky, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely been a little bit of a wild ride getting to this part. I mean, we only have one more week coming up after this week is completed, Coco.
Yeah, well, and what's even funnier is the fact that even though it's one more week, we only have 2 more days. There's only one day next week that we're going to be playing Academy. That's sort of everyone wrapping up, facing each other once during this rotation of the Academy season. So this is that final stretch of the week of saying, all right, this is where you have to start making leaps and bounds, because you go into next week, you only have one day to perform. And if you still have this tiebreaker situation with a lot of these teams, that is going to put so much weight on those players in just a single day.
So what about the matchup that's coming up right now, Coco? I mean, we got to start off the day somehow, and we're going to be started off with a very competitive one, and that's going to be Dignitas versus Immortals.
Yeah, Dignitas, you know, they've been having some interesting snippets here and there. I like to sort of call them as a sola fide academy, where it's a lot of LCS veterans that are sort of left to their own devices and need to discover themselves with each other. And as much as I'd like to see Dignitas saying, okay, we need to get our sort of player identities back into role, they still have to find that team cohesion, and that's where they've been really struggling with the rest of the teams. And going up against Immortals, who's been doing really well for themselves, and with the players that they have in their lineup, that challenge is even more highlighted going into today.
Especially after what we saw in week 3 with Pretty. He's been doing some great performances, even though he's been losing. He's been an EU prospect. Immortals look fantastic with him. They look like the more concise team, even with their record being what it is.
Yeah, and we're going to be having that matchup with Yasui, a very aggressive mid laner, someone who I'm a little bummed out having to sort of condone himself to the utility and control mages in the mid lane. He had a really good performance on Silas. His Tristana was appealing to watch, but of course, unfortunately, he wasn't able to really carry anything to the fold and sort of get that extra win for Dignitas Academy to break forward. So maybe he can do this time around, and that's the key matchup I'm going to be looking at today is Yasui versus Pretty. Who's going to be taking this W home for their team?
Oh, that's going to be a spicy one to see have to go through. I mean, as we said, like, you do have a lot of strength coming out of Pretty, a lot of strength coming out of Yasui. Overall, all the lanes are looking pretty feisty when you start to break them down. I mean, taking over another look over at Immortals, we call them the more concise team. I do want to take a look at the bot lane now, because we do have Keith, someone who's been in the LCS for a long time and has sort of fallen from grace, and we haven't really seen him make that climb back up.
Yeah, and he's in this odd space of showing with just statistics that he's been a good marksman in the academy scene. But when you sort of take him out of just a team situation and put him as an individual, he starts to struggle a little bit. Yes, he's a high resource player. Yes, he needs a lot of attention in that bottom side of the map, but it doesn't really reap the rewards as much as the team really requires from him. He sort of comes out a little bit neutral, maybe slightly ahead, and that's a big question mark for me going into this matchup, where Spawn and JJ, they've been lackluster throughout the season, and maybe this is the time that Keith really shows his colors and proves to us that he needs to be in the LCS.
Yeah, I mean, we want to see it from Immortals as a whole, that's for sure. We also want to see it from Dignitas. We talked about this being competitive, definitely very competitive getting into this. And we are going to be throwing it over to Champ Select in just a second to see how this is going to play out. Dignitas versus Immortals, about to start right now.
And remember what I was talking about with Pretty and Yasui. We're going to be really prioritizing them in the early stages of the draft. But first, we got to trim a little bit of that bottom off of the top, to be fair, because Xayah taken away from both Spawn and Keith. Pretty key member, but I'm also going to be looking at Jin and Kaisa if they'll be sticking around as well.
Yeah, so bans coming out, Rel, you already talked about Xayah, as well as Udyr. Udyr have been a very, very popular pick in the jungle. If he's not banned away, it's usually the first pick, as well as Seraphine taken off the map. Gnar going to be removed as well.
So don't have that counter pick in the top lane this time around for Lorlo, and this is a situation for him where going into B1 you can take that ADC just as fine, but it leaves a lot of questions for Tapoon, who's had a pretty shallow pool recently, and he only has like Jace and Gragas left that he has shown for himself. I could see an Ornn possibly pop up for himself. The other one I'd be looking for would be an Aurelia, who's been sort of going through the rafters. It's just a question of if Tapoon plays it, and going against Renekton or B1, all right, really throwing down the gauntlet on the top side.
I mean, when I usually see that Renekton, it especially picked early, I usually think of the old Renekton Italy that we were seeing like a couple months back, but that's usually on red side. It's kind of a feisty pick to just go with the first pick Renekton right out the gates.
Well, that's a good tease, though, actually. Like you mentioned, the Renekton Nidalees, and guess who is a very favored Nidalee player? It's Acadian, so we might be seeing that one pop up in the B2 section. Kaisa is grabbed up for Keith and himself, and a nice Gragas flex as well. Doesn't really need to deal with anything in that top side, can just farm safely, or you can throw him in that support role and be just as good.
Yeah, so next pick coming out, it's the Gragas you were talking about. You can flex him around, still waiting for the response to come out.
I want the Nidalee from here. Like, we really need that. And then we could possibly look for a flex in the jungle just to get that grab, or excuse me, not the jungle, but in the support role, get that grab picked up. Misfortune being snagged here for Spawn, getting that one early. I like the utility change going forward for Spawn and J2J. Sort of puts a lot of the carry potential on the top end of the map right now. And there you go, like predicted, Nidalee grabbed up for Acadian.
Yeah, Nidalee going to be grabbed, so you are going to have a lot of that high pace, quick farming jungle. But this hover right here is one that interests me.
Ooh.
It's going to be Quinn being hovered for the time being. I'm not sure if they're going to lock this in. It would be a pretty spicy pick, a very aggressive pick, but instead going to switch over to the Hecarim, and something that we'd be more inclined to expecting.
I like the Hecarim pickup. You know, just go with a good old faithful as it is, have really good engagement, and this now sort of gives a very visible hand over to Dignitas Academy to sort of counteract into the second ban phase, saying, all right, we know you're going to want to go with team fighting. You're going to try and make this a very chaotic situation going into the mid and late game. Let's see if we can ban out some chaotic follow-up as well. Rel might be something that they be looking to ban out if they're expecting Gragas to be going into Tapoon's hands. And the Yone banned out from Immortals Academy shows that they're expecting Yusui to go a little bit more carry focused. I'm looking for another ban as well from Immortals to be either support or maybe a Silas taken away from Yusui, who did really well on that, because it just sort of brings nightmare flashbacks of Yusui grabbing that Hecarim ultimate Shadow and just doing absolute nuts damage. But a great reply as well from Dig Academy saying, let's take the supports off the bat. Let's make sure that we have a lot of those engaged supports off the board and make sure that we can possibly get an Enchanter down there to bully.
I mean, we've seen it before. Keith is someone who needs to be enabled by his support, and Joey is someone who is great at engaging on support. So taking away the Leona is definitely a very smart move to come out of Dig. Meanwhile, the Lucian getting banned away over on the side of Immortals. One more ban from Dig, and I do expect it to still be support-sided.
Yeah, and it's now just a question of what will be left for Immortals Academy. And with the Syndra ban, okay, well, Orianna is still available if you want to do a blind mid for IMT. You could give that to Pretty. He's been doing fine on that. There's also the Twisted Fate and Azir, but I'd want to leave those for R5 and just have that as a counter pick. And you could pick up your Rel or you could pick up your support here, but this comes in the question of what does Immortals prioritize more? Do they want that support to be that last counter pick? And with that final lock-in, Orianna is going to show that hand. We can see if Rel or I'd have to say Alistair might be the other one that Joey might be going into those hands. But this gives Dignitas Academy to at least get that counter pick in mid lane and look for a support.
Yeah, Azir, nothing too special coming out. You know, it does give me a little snooze when I see that, and I'm waiting with all the excitement in the world. But still waiting for that support pick as well from Dignitas. They are hovering over towards that Lulu. And again, not really too much left, at least on the aggressive side for the support picks. Going to go for the Galio over in the bot.
I don't know if I like the Galio pickup. Sure, it's decent going into whatever Immortals Academy throws at them, but there's no real engage on Dig Academy. Like, there's nothing really. Like, yes, you have the follow-up. Yes, you have some zoning potential. If you find a spear from Acadian here or there, or a flash called a Meek coming in from Lorlo. But now they're left with devices of saying, okay, if you play into us, which Immortals Academy is most welcome to do so. They've got the Hecarim and the Nautilus, for goodness sake. they have the tools to disengage and sort of create a nice bubble of space for Spawn and Yasui to sort of work around. But there's so many tools that can disrupt them during that time, where even though Dig Academy gets that pressure and sort of that alleviation for just a moment, Nautilus is going to be on you with Joey. Podluck is going to be doing Shadow of Onslaughts. Is going to get past Azir's wall of soldiers. And all the meanwhile, so is Keith. Keith will be able to jump right in as well. And it's just a matter of time if Tapoon and Pretty can just sort of create that chaos and really condense the fight a little bit more for Immortals Academy to thrive. So in the late game, I'm really giving this draft over to IMT. But Dig Academy, this is where they need to pop off early. Acadian needs to focus Lorlo and Yasui, really get the ball rolling to make sure that going into those mid-late game stages that they can actually start fights and they can create pressure where it is needed around objectives.
I mean, I'm dying to see what's going to happen around some of those, because you try and find the engage onto Dig, it's going to be Emperor's Divide, but what about the 3 other engages that are going to come through?
True.
There's a lot of resources you have to deal with, and Dig are going to have to keep that in mind as they head towards those skirmishes in the mid-game.
And all's on the line, too. Like, Immortals 3-3, Dig 2-4, and if you take this win as Dignitas Academy, that gives you a nice, at least, stretch to sort of widen the gap a little bit against the more heavily contested games that are going to be happening today during those tiebreaker situations. And I'm a little bummed out Immortals didn't go for that early invade. There's nothing that they'd be able to find because of how passive Dignitas is playing, and I respect that because they know that really this early game needs to go to their success. And if you have a death happen, if Spawn has to force a summon or a JJ gets caught out and loses his life, then a lot of that early planning that is going to be top heavy focused will just be thrown to the wayside.
And that's what worries me about Dignitas' comp a little bit. If they don't get any early momentum going for them, there's not much of a way for them to find a way back in, other than just hoping you get that scaling, sustained DPS coming out of the Azure. So it's going to be a very tough game for them, but it's still something that's doable. I feel like a lot depends on this early game play.
No, for sure. I'm going to be looking at how Acadian tracks. You can see him on the bottom side. So it's going to be a mutual understanding of scuttle grabs for both Podluck and Acadian. And then seeing how sort of the top interaction goes as well. Honestly, if I'm Lorlo here, it might be a good time to say, let's go cheater. Let's go ahead, really push out this wave, get it pushed up to where I get an early level 3. I can recall, grab an extra Dorn's Blade, or get a Cull just for extra farming, because I know Tapoon's going to be playing a little bit passive while Podluck is on the other side of the map. And if that does come to case, it gives you also that extra bulk and that just extra pump of stats to be primed and ready for when Acadian and Yasui are ready to tower dive.
But it is a difficult task trying to take down this Gragas. You still have a lot of passive healing and a lot of tools to just be able to disrupt a lot of the engagements that we're going to see out of Lorlo. So not going to be an easy task indeed. Meanwhile, Potluck able to clear out that top side, now making his way towards the bottom side. Pretty much the jungles mirroring each other as they work their way through this early game.
I like how forward Keith and Joey are. I think this is pretty darn good for themselves. Like, yes, it is a winning lane for them, but it also gives this nice sign of saying we have objective priority whenever we call for it. And you sort of touch back up to how Taboon is a very big boy. There's a lot of meat to cut through for Lorlo. He can contest and he can create that TP pressure for when these dragons spawn. Yes, it's only 3 minutes in, but this is how far ahead both Dig and Immortals need to think to get this game rolling. You do not want to have a sloppy early game for Immortals to fall behind and say, well, we can't team fight anymore because they can just stat chuck us. And same goes for Dig. They need to make sure that they have the confidence to actually fight and contest for these objectives when it does have the time to come.
And you're seeing some smart moves come out of Dig as well. Over in the top lane, Lorlo crashed the wave in, drops a ward over on the golems just to get an idea of where the pathing of Potluck's going to be. It will enable a lot of safety for Acadian to just be able to grab that scuttle, no problem. But they are already making their presence known on the map. They're already scouting out where Immortals are going to be.
And see if you can check on those Krugs as well, which are going to be spawning fairly shortly. So we might have a little skirmish on this top side of the map, as we have Lorlo do a little dance with Tapoon, who's fairly low. This is within lethal range, but Lorlo is also pretty unhealthy, could lose his life if they try and fight for this.
And they know the golems are going to be spawning soon, so you have to know that Potluck will be in this area, and they do get the vision on him. They do spot him out. Not going to go forward with the dive.
good call there, making sure they don't go overly aggressive, but also with Potluck on that defensive position with a good reset. We also saw that TP come in from Pretty to make sure that he has that mid priority still on lock. He went for a quick reset. He said, all right, I got Corrupting Potion. I'm going to start stacking up my tier now. Also have Boots as well, which just sort of plays into how Pretty likes to sort of manage the map. Yes, his wave management is good, but he doesn't like to be in the lane. He just wants to get out of it, see if he can help out Potluck, help out Keith with getting some objective setup online. And then once that's all good to go, he'll be sitting in the shadows waiting for a surprise shockwave out from the bushes.
Now, both junglers around this bottom side of the map, and a lot of vision established, forward vision coming out from Immortals. Able to grab that pixel bush. It's going to be the recall. Dignitas not willing to push any more far forward. You do have Acadian walking away from that area, and Potluck is now showing up towards the bot side, so don't want to risk anything with that. Still playing that very, very safe early game.
Well, look at the resets coming in from bot as well. They just went for their first buy. You have the Serrated Dirt coming in for Keith, and then 3 longswords from spawn. So a little heavy on the damage, I'd have to say, which is going to be great going for this Ocean Dragon. Gonna have some nice priority. I like that Yusui also went and grabbed that Scrying Orb just to deny that from Pretty, to check where Acadian may be lying. And look where he is. He's on the top side. And with how these resets are coming in, with Potluck now going to have a recall here, they are going to be a little slow on some objectives here, and this is where once we hit level 6, now that we have with Lorlo, we can start to see another fight start to brew going into this top side. And this is where Potluck either plays that defensive position again and says, hey, I'm going to hover top side, make sure Acadian doesn't do anything silly, or he goes straight bottom, heavily invests in that bottom side to take Dragon in priority and go away. But here we go with that new dive.
And yeah, Acadian knowing he has to go very, very quickly. Lorlo gonna flash over him. Poon will go down, and Acadian will find first blood. Showing up too far too late is Potluck.
Yeah, unfortunately now he doesn't have the time to go back and try and get some priority on that bot side of the map to punish this dive that came in. And with Lorlo giving away that first blood to Acadian, a nice little grant, we get to see that, hey, we can now really try and push forward on this top side. Acadian's going to be jumping into that Night Harvester, and now we can just sort of look at that replay again. Very well played, very traditional, cut and clean from Dignitas.
I mean, traditional is a little bit of an understatement, though. It was the same thing twice. The clear from bottom to top, gank, didn't work, come back, bottom to top, gank, hey, it worked out this time, and now Potluck is the one who's a little bit behind on that momentum.
No worries on that end. This is where that early advantage is going to be coming to play. I see Yusui might be caught in a little pinch here. You do not want to give this advantage back over to Immortals. Has to, doesn't flash, but does have his wall of soldiers to help divide Pretty away from himself.
Yeah, it does result in the shockwave being used. So ultimate for ultimate, but it's a greater loss for Yusui when that ultimate is used much more effectively on a defensive stance if you're getting ganked on. All that being said, though, Yusui didn't burn flash, and neither did Pretty.
Have Herald spawning in 30 seconds, so then we're going to have 2 objectives on each side, and that threat will really help to drive Dignitas to be constantly aggressive in this top end. But now Potluck says, okay, I cannot play Acadian's game anymore. I need to find some aggression somewhere, and unfortunately for him, Acadian has really been doing well on his positioning on the map, going with that top bot to top, like you mentioned, to get that priority for Lorlo, and then making sure that Potluck cannot counteract. But here comes a Potluck with Shadow Bots on.
Coming straight in, trying to play defense is JJ. On the run now, Keith will be able to take him down. Here comes the counter gank. Acadian just gets a spear, but doesn't want to go in too much of a risk, and a good response coming out from the squad of Immortals.
Sneaky blast cone from Potluck, dodging the vision from both the control ward and just the vision that Acadian was having with the dragon,
and just being there.
Yeah, just being there. Like, it was a good call, and sort of the point that I was discussing before that happened was that Acadian is trying to be where Potluck is, because he can win these 1v1s now, and he can win that priority over for Dignitas Academy. But Potluck, with that quick and very nice flank there, sort of throws that all to the wayside and says, okay, you go back to top, you focus top, you dive to Poon for all you want. I've got priority on Keith, and I'm going to make sure he's my carry.
Yeah, that's the thing that was cracking me up right there. Acadian immediately heads back to that lane, and they're setting up for this dive right now. JJ looking to lead the charge as the wave crashes into the tower. Tapoon tries to cull it away. Out comes the explosive cast. JJ will show up in the top side, trying to stop this dive from going the way of Dignitas. It's still gonna find the kill for Dig. JJ, far too late.
Yeah, it was well played by Tapoon to try and deny as much time as possible, but unfortunately there were one too many there for him to survive. And they're able to take that top, go straight to this Rift Herald as well with a great reset coming in from Spawn. And with this, they can really start to break open the map. And it's a question of now, where will they start to place this Herald to gain that extra gold? I think you just continue to just dump it all into this top side of the map. Get Lorlo online, get him to his mythic as fast as possible so no one can ever challenge him in a side lane again. And then you have this performance coming in from Acadian, who is 2-0 and will be able to get to his Night Harvester fairly quickly. This is where he can go in, escort with JJ, get some flanking positions for these later objectives down the line, and then really start to have a good team fight situation into the mid game, where now Immortals, they're sort of trying to pick up the pieces, pick up the scraps that were left behind from Dig Academy's tempo, and they're able to get at least a dragon for themselves and maybe get some vision control down here to make sure Keith is just able to play safe.
Dragon picking up, going to be Ocean Drake. Next Drake of the game will be Mountain. A lot of control coming out of Immortals for this bot side. Ward coming out far too late for Dignitas, but objective control, you always got to like it if you're Immortals. It does set up win conditions that a lot of teams tend to just ignore because they try and go for pretty much the brute force. We're just going to take the team fights. We're going to take the Baron. They let those dragons slide through. We've seen it from numerous teams in both LCS and Academy.
You know what I've been noticing as well? Pretty has been stuck in his lane, and that just feels miserable for Immortals. Like, he needs to get out of his lane as soon as possible, and that might be something that they need to look for a reset here. Look to open up the map as well, but because Dig Academy has that tempo, has so much pressure on this top side of the map, it's really difficult for them to do so. I like both times Dig looked top, Pretty was roaming up. He was walking up there, but when he got to that halfway point, the play was already done. Tapoon had already lost his life, and he had to go back and catch the wave that Yusui was hard pushing into his turret to make sure that he could stabilize this laning situation. And with that tempo, Pretty is sort of left with empty hands, saying, I need to find a play for me to sort of get online and get this ball rolling for Immortals Academy. But playing the patient game, I touch back on the draft, they had a better team fight situation and for objective control. As long as they have that in their mindset and they play calm and play confident, they can still win back this game. It's not out of their hands just yet.
Oh, very easily. Kaisa doesn't take too much to really come online. Keith playing that already has kill in his pocket, and you can get in that back line and start to really tear up these skirmishes when you have a team comp like Immortals.
Did you buy into the new skins here from Shanghai Skins? That Nautilus skin just is sick. Like, it's absolutely sick. Speaking of sick, nice Hex Flash, but we'll see if Yusui actually dies here from the 1v1. A little unfortunate.
As Shockwave goes out, gonna be burnt, but won't get too much out of that one. Flash will not be burnt. Yusui will be fine and alive. And now, you know, it's a good attempt. It does get Pretty a little bit of relief in his lane after being crashed numerous times by Yusui.
So with this slow game, I can see Joey, see if he can find a peek here. If he can catch Spawn, they have the actual burst damage to just take him outright of the game and throw him to gray screen. And Acadian has also slowed down a lot of his top pressure. And we've got to look at that timer on Rift Herald. I was talking about how you have to dump a lot of the stats into Lorlo in this top end. And you've got about 40 seconds here, if not less, for this Herald to actually come online. You need to drop it somewhere, and you need to drop it fast so you can actually get those turret plates, which are only up for another minute. So if this just goes to the wayside, that's actually a really great win and a great stall here from IMT. But just as I say it, they go ahead and decide to drop it for Yusui's lane.
Gonna get a good chunk in. Try and knock it as low as possible to get those extra plates. The charge goes in, and Yusui will cash in more gold. And yeah, even with the CS difference, that is really going to be the difference in getting Yusui online for this early game, and still keeping Pretty in a tough situation where he's just stuck and stranded in the mid lane.
I was bummed out too because they had just 100 health left on that third plate for Yusui to grab an additional 160 gold for himself, and unfortunately wasn't able to get it with the Shelly charge. But for them, they're still able to pump up that extra damage. We were looking at how the gold was spread. It was very much just a slight first blood lead for Dignitas Academy, but now it's started to open up a little bit more, get some breath of fresh air, and this is where you're gonna get to cash in on a lot of those mythic items, where Spawn gets an unfortunate shot in the back and can't reset just yet.
So now all the recalls coming in from Dignitas. Able to get some good purchases coming in. I mean, we got a minute before the Drake comes on, so neutral objective fight could be in the window.
Yeah, but look at those key items, the Gore Drinker and the Night Harvester that were picked up. That's what that early pressure in the top side was all about. You're not even close to getting the Sunfire or the Turbo Chem Tank for Tapoon, but at least you've got the Trinity Force here for Potluck, so you've got some power dumped in there. The next one I'd be looking for is for Keith to cash in for his mythic item. We have the Luden's Echo ready to go for Pretty, and Yasui is yet to cash in on his own, so this is where you have that damage advantage and that stats advantage here for Immortals Academy going into this dragon. So for them, Dig might just have to forfeit this second one because they are just not ready economically to try and challenge this.
Not ready on the map as well. I mean, both blue buffs spawn, and that's kind of one of the sad sides about being on blue side. When your blue buff spawn, dragon spawns at the same time, you kind of concede some of that vision control.
Yeah.
But Immortals just holding the bush for now. Nice spear to go through on the Joey.
That hurt. Oh god. Like don't want to take any more of those. Like just a little reminder, Immortals, you want to fight into them. You do not want to give this this big space here for Dignitas to work with. Like you need to get onto Yasui, get onto Acadian. Keith just taking another spear to the back, pushing them away from the dragon. All that tempo is now lost just from a couple spears that Acadian was able to land.
Yeah, Acadian on his own, just chipping away at the health bars of Immortals to dissuade them from getting anywhere near this dragon, and it's going to be completely in their hands now. Dignitas will pick up this Mountain Drake with no resistance from Immortals.
And I respect the hunger that Immortals Academy was trying to get a team fight going for themselves, but they should have just started the dragon there. They had the man advantage. They could have just dragged the dragon out of the pit, quickly take it with Keith and Pretty, and call it a day. But instead, they tried to bait for a fight, allowed Acadian to throw spears into the darkness, lands those couple few, and with that, he's able to just completely take that tempo away from themselves and gives a dragon over. Now with that Infernal Soul being spawned on the map, we look to the top side, we see Rift Herald and say, okay, well, we know which team has a better top priority here. It's just a matter of if they're going to try and press that advantage.
They should. Lorlo just hiding out in that bush, waiting for Tapoon to get a little bit closer, just a little bit more. Let me get that stun. Let me help you on your way out from this minion wave. Gotta watch what that Gore Drinker can do when we get into these later fights. That heal can be some of the most nastiest things to have to deal with, especially when you're dealing with Renekton, who pops his Q and gets healed anyway.
Oh yeah, it's just absolute ridiculous healing coming in from him. Luckily, you have the Bramble Vest from Tapoon already. There's no other heal cut just yet on the sides of Immortals, so they can play it safe, but this is where, looking out to that Rift Herald once again, Joey is up here to help with that peeling, so is JJ, but with Potluck starting the Herald early, this is where this fight's going to come into play. Tapoon had that reset so he could have the Sunfire for this fight and TPing in, but now it's Lorlo that actually has the advantage with the flank.
Yeah, Keith is still trying to make his way there. Late to the fight will be Spawn.
Yeah.
Shoving away.
Watch
the spear's landing in clean again and again and again.
I know Mundo's not in the game, but I think we need to do some dodgeball Mundo practice right now because Immortals is just not doing too hot on that, and Acadian is just running wild with it, and he's able to just swing the tempo away. This is where we look for Joey. Doesn't land the hook.
Over the wall, gonna land onto the support. Here comes the bullet time. It's only really going on to Tapoon, but the fight continues. Lorlo diving onto the backline, tries to find Keith. Keith will flash away, but catches spear from Acadian on the way out. Yasui dealing that sustained damage on the Tapoon as the flash forward from Lorlo tries to grab Potluck and will be able to feast on his corpse. Tapoon runs away over the wall. Yasui chases him. Emperor's Divide back into the team. Pretty is now stranded underneath his own tower with 4 members of Dignitas surrounding him. He's not long for this world, Coco. He is not long at all. He will buy some time with the distance, throw out the command attacks. But here comes the Gator, very, very hungry. Autos go through the slow from the Make It Rain, and that is another kill. A huge teamfight win for Dignitas.
And with Yasui picking that one up, it's Lorlo just saying, hey, I'm paying my taxes to the Emperor. Give yourself a kill on that. And with this fight, it's all because of how slippery Acadian was. not being hit by the hook from Joey flashing over the wall, and then also being able to dodge out just barely Potluck's Shadow of Onslaught. Hope we can get a replay on that to just sort of really look at how many resources were dumped to Acadian to just try and get this Nidalee off the board for this Rift Herald contestation, but it gave so much time for Lorlo to do his thing and for Yasui to have that space, and that's what we were talking about in the draft, to be able to create that space for those carries to do their thing, and that's what Dig Academy got.
It was some beautiful stuff. All those spears leading into the fight, chipping away at the health bars. We're going to take another look at what really broke down this fight.
So this was after Joey had already exhausted his hit to get onto Acadian. Thankfully for them, they also didn't have the damage to close him out either. It was just Potluck and Keith. Pretty was nowhere in the vicinity. He was dealing with Yasui during all of this, and because of the resources being spread and scattered during that fight, Dignitas Academy was just able to do their thing and, you know, play a little bit of cat and mouse while you do it.
I definitely appreciate this, you know, start the Benny Hill theme and put the BM on while you're at it. Acadian definitely deserves it. 4-0-0. He's been styling in this game so far.
Yeah, and it's the most picked champion for himself as well, and it's just a recipe for success here for Dig Academy. And it's just, again, touching back on how they're supposed to play is to really get into that confidence, get into that stride, and then independently, as individuals of the team, be able to build a team identity. And thankfully for themselves, they've been able to do so with Acadian and Lorlo really piloting themselves forward, and Yasui has been creating that great space for them. Now it's onto the side of Immortals, who's sort of backed into a corner here, saying, okay, we made a good draft for the later stages of the game, but our early game has just been absolutely disastrous. 20 minutes in, we've already lost 6 kills. Though for them, they're only 3,000 gold behind, and a lot of that is dumped onto an individual member of Acadian here for Dig Academy. That's a little glimmer of hope for Immortals to say, okay, we're not out of this game just yet as a team. We can sort of build ourselves back up, prepare for these Baron and these soul point fights. But for this moment, they have to give over this dragon, get some more economy going, and then really pressure forward for the second item power spike for them to actually have a lot of their composition online.
Now Dignitas setting up in the mid lane. We'll throw down that Azir tower. Just buy some control on the map so they can set up for this Infernal Drake. They will take that no problem. Even though Acadian does have a lot of gold on the team, you also got to look at Yasui. He's been scaling quite well, 2-0, CSing beautifully. Spawn having a tougher time in the CS department over on the bot side meanwhile, but still hasn't really been shut down. The other tools that Dignitas have are starting to scale, so you can shut down Acadian now, you can win team fights, but it's not going to be that way for much longer.
Just sort of doing a little bit of a checkup here after that dragon was taken down, and you see, not only with the buff coming in with patch 11.3, you now have some extra damage and some extra attack speed onto the shield bow for Spawn. So that's a nice little upgrade for him, and that's sort of a nice little change up from what we've seen in the Gale Force. So it gives him that extra utility and that extra survivability to make sure that he's not the only member that can really just get clapped out of these fights. And that's a great pickup for Spawn later down the line, like I mentioned, with those team fight situations, to create some additional space, and it allows JJ to focus on other members if they're the ones that get caught.
Joey try and again as he does that Hex Splash over the wall to try and get that little sneaky play going in, but it's not going to result in too much other than losing a tower over in the top lane. Dignitas really getting control of this map 22 minutes in. They already have a 4k gold lead, and they're looking to even collect more. A nice spear onto Joey, takes out so much of his health. Almost found another one, but no kill to go through. But that is the forward momentum that Dignitas have as they take over the jungle of Immortals.
Yeah. Throw out the spears as many as you can, see what you can land, and if you're able to get a kill with it, that's just even more pressure going over themselves. Look at the vision control that they have set up for this Baron as well. They're not a team that can take it per se at this moment in time, but it's something that they can bait it with ease. They can have the traps for Nidalee, the spears coming out of the darkness, and of course the catches that both Lorlo and JJ would be able to find. And with Yasui playing weak side during this stage, it just dampens the deficit that Tapoon is having to deal with. Not only a 30 CS deficit and also a 3 death discrepancy, but also the fact that now he has to deal with someone that is ranged and has to be able to deal with that kind of pushing strategy and can push fairly well. So it means Immortals has to now invest for Pretty, who is a much more crucial member when it comes to these objective contentions.
Something else they're investing in is the vision control game. You can see a lot of vision over on the red side of their jungle, trying to get it around the Baron area. You still have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for Dragon comes up, so it is going to be a hot area to keep a close eye on, especially when you have so much sustained damage that comes out of Dig. They can take it pretty quickly, and Acadian can take your health pretty quickly as well with one spear.
Yeah, and like the other thing too, look at the magic resist on the teams. Do you see any magic resist, Destrix?
I do not.
I see Merc treads, and that's pretty much it. So Acadian is having a good run of the money here for damage output, and if Keith is the one playing forward in front of Potluck, that's just a worrying trend here for Immortals Academy that now has to contest over their own red buff.
Joey trying to get the hook. Ooh. Another spear goes out. It's going to land onto Keith, knocking him to about half health as he tries desperately to regen some of that off of the red buff itself. Shoot some missiles of his own, but they're not going to land, and the threat of Acadian still online. Those spears are swinging through the jungle.
And all the meanwhile, Yusui, bottom lane, pushing forward.
Just shoving those waves, getting that CS, growing that lead, and making sure to keep Immortals locked down in their own base.
And this is exactly what we wanted. So with this, it's just a matter of time of when will the dam break? When will the floodgates open here for Dignitas Academy to crack open the turtle shell of Immortals and really try and take this game as a stronghold, like a stronghold here for themselves? Because even though with the poke, it's still fairly individual dependent. They need Acadian there to apply that pressure because those spears have just been landing on the right targets every single time. But if you take Acadian out of that mix, if Joey does land that lucky hook or that dredge line, maybe 1 or 2 fights to contentions down the line, this still has a recipe for success for Immortals because of just how well all of their different picks in this composition complement each other. You look at how this gold graph is going, it's only a 1.3k gold lead for Acadian versus Potluck, but then it's a 2k deficit for Tapoon and Lorlo, and that's the other huge member that we need to watch out for as the flanker for DIGA Academy.
Speaking of the flank, over on that top side, Split pushing all by his lonesome and no one to respond out of Immortals. Immortals are putting much more attention over towards this Infernal Drake as the battle lines are drawn. Dig are not willing to take that fight without their star top laners, so they start to back off and get priority over the Baron area.
Yep, trying to fight for that one. I saw that spear being thrown out from Acadian. They want to force them to make sure that Lorlo has this flank, and here we go.
Ooh. And here we go, trying to find the engage onto Tapoon. Tapoon will get some damage in, but missed the explosive barrel. Okay. Potluck, meanwhile, on the backside, here comes the bullet time, gonna land onto nothing. So no kills going through either way. Both teams really close to pulling the trigger into an outright team fight.
Yeah, but look at the ultimates that are still available. You have the Shockwave online for Pretty. Everything else has been exhausted for Immortals Academy. And then Dig, they still have the Soldier's Divide from Yusui, but they also have the Heroic Entrance. So they have some tools to create some space here to try and contest for this dragon. But at this moment, they're a man down. Lorlo is TPing in to try and find another flank.
Here comes Lorlo on the flank, looking to find the TP. Acadian's going in to try and get the steal, and he will claim it. Infernal Drake over to Dig, hopping over the wall. JJ is isolated out, and now Immortals will try and fight this, will try and survive, but they've lost their ADC. They're losing Pretty as well. One more spear goes out, and Immortals are wiped from the rift. Potluck and Joey forced to run back to the base as Dignitas take control.
And a beautiful fight from Dignitas Academy once again. Lorlo finding that flank to throw chaos into the minds of Immortals Academy, and then Yusui with a great compliment, getting directly into the center to force all of the members of Immortals Academy towards his team and towards a great position for Spawn and Acadian to just rip apart the members. But he also divided Pretty as well. Pretty could never help his team to help set up that condensed team fight that they needed, and because of that, they get to reap all the rewards. The stolen dragon for Soul Point and the Baron to top it all off. Dignitas is confidently in the driver's seat this time.
So far ahead. 8K separating these teams. They have so many win conditions to their name. They could really just start putting the death march now onto Immortals, and there's not much Immortals can really do about it. They have to play passively in these next stages of the game, and you're pretty much just hoping that Dignitas make a mistake as we take a look at that dragon fight.
Yep, so let's see how low that dragon got. All right, at 1200, what a great timing with the execution from Acadian. But this is the Yasui that I was talking about. What a great stream of shuffle to come in and divide Pretty away from the rest of his team, and then to create that chaotic environment that Dignitas Academy's composition thrives in. And again, it's the individuals of Dig Academy that have just been popping off left and right. It's not a team unit, it's every single person playing to their best potential. Yasui, Acadian, Lorlo, all doing the very best that I've seen him in Academy so far.
And we commended Immortals for this type of play. We talked about the inconsistency of Dignitas. They've really cleaned it up going into these last weeks. They're really trying to work up the standings.
Yeah, now it's a question of how they can break open the turtle shell. Hey, I just cast a curse that, I suppose, as they break open the top inhibitor turret. Now they have the availability to really whittle away at this, and there is that question that comes to mind. Can Immortals Academy still fight in these congested 5v5 situations? And I gotta say, definite no, because you got the Banshee's Veil on Acadian. It's going to be very difficult to take out these power carries of Dignitas Academy. And look at where Pretty is. He's getting absolutely bullied by Lorlo, and it takes 2 members of Immortals to answer 1 of Dignitas.
And now the siege comes in, looking for the mid lane is Dignitas. The spear's still ringing through, one landing onto Potla. The cannon creeps wail away, the Croc will get closer and deconstruct the mid lane inhibitor tower. Now, the inhibitor is exposed. Slowly chipping away at damage. Immortals trying to draw a battle line, trying to dissuade Dignitas from going in, but they cannot really find a way in themselves. They have to figure out some kind of answer to these Nidalee spears that are continuously chipping away at the health bars of Immortals.
And they don't have much ranged wave clear either. Pretty has to get fairly mid-range to try and challenge that cannon minion. But now Lorlo just takes that advantage, just decides to pressure top side, force other members to divide to the top end, and gives that freedom for Dignitas Academy to take this mid inhibitor. And from here, they can go for that quick reset. They've got a good amount of time left for the Baron buff. I'd have to say, well, 30 seconds if they want to try and invest in heavily dumping into the bottom side of the map. But this is where one of my great friends says, you just take everything they know and love, and take all of their jungle, take all of the camps, get all of the gold, so when you do reset and they try and step out of their base, they say, well, where's my garden? Where did my dog go? Oh, they took it, so we can't get back into this game economically.
They're just gonna John Wick 'em. Unfortunately, it's not gonna have the same ending there for Immortals, at least so far. Now Dignitas back on the map. I mean, at this point, it's going to be surgical. Dignitas have only lost 1 kill in this game so far, and 1 dragon on top of that. Immortals just haven't found their footing in this game. Dignitas pushing now towards that bottom end, where you have super minions pushing in the top and mid. Eventually, it's going to be too much to handle. Immortals need a misstep to come out of Dig. They're waiting for that shockwave to find the right targets to get a good teamfight shockwave, followed by the Shadows of Onslaught of Shadows, excuse me, and for Keith to just do damage, man.
True. He's got 3 items. He's got his Runon's Hurricane. He can finally start dumping onto multiple members with the damage, but I don't think they have the front line to do it anymore. Like, Tapoon's going to get absolutely torn to shreds, Joey as well, and even though you have to get a 5-man Onslaught of Shadows or something, but they're really making a Hail Mary play here.
Ooh, Potluck trying to find his way in. They're going to find Acadian, but Acadian will flash back out. Here comes the Onslaught of Shadows onto Acadian, but Potluck is all by his lonesome because Lorlo has gone deep. Here comes the hero's entrance, finding the taunt on the Tapoon, who gets knocked up pretty, runs critically low, tries to make way for his base as he watches his teammates get annihilated. Dig now marching to take this win. Spawn with the flash forward. Doesn't get the kill onto Pretty, but is happy to take the win on this game number 1 of the day.
And I'll have to check the patch notes again, because I know Onslaught of Shadows applies fear. I didn't know Lorlo TP does as well, as everyone routed back to their base, as Pretty is left to the Nexus. And unfortunate for Immortals Academy, but Dignitas Academy showing their colors and tying up this 3-4 for today.
And Coco, we said this is a very important game for Dig. They played like it was an important game. From the very start, Acadian was just making moves. Lorlo, that top side control that happened, even though they conceded just a little bit in the bot lane, it wasn't enough to stop the momentum that we saw coming out of Dignitas.
And it's a very anti-hero story from what we were sort of pointing at in the narratives, that we need to break this tiebreaker of 6th place with all of these teams. Dig Academy said, no, everyone come together. We're going to have a great party on week 5, and we're going to figure out who's 7th to 10th place to see who's going to be dealing with tier 1 amateur tournaments, because I don't think any of the academy teams outside of Golden Guardians who have already participated really want to dip their hand into that cookie jar just yet.
And for Immortals, it felt like they just couldn't find their footing in. I mean, we commended their composition, we commended their draft quite a bit, but they really didn't do too much with it, Coco.
No, and this was one of those times where Potluck was struggling on the Hecarim, was sort of really scrambling to find his identity in the early game. He didn't really keep pressure with Acadian, and a lot of that was just the fact that he needed to get to level 6 to start fights, but his team also needed to open up the map, and there weren't a lot of tools for them to do so unless the lanes did it themselves. If Joey and Keith were able to get online and really start to crack open that bottom side of the map, then Potluck would be able to find some advantages, but he never really invested in them outside of 1 or 2 games, and he never found objective priority either, and it was really just Acadian's game to win this time around. Well, really Potluck, Tapoon, and Pretty were sort of left barehanded and didn't have a lot of priority in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Tapoon was basically begging for help, anyone to come up there off that SOS that was going on, but even Pretty was too occupied dealing with the mid lane Azir. But overall, congratulations to Dignitas, a great win coming from them. We're going to throw it over to a short break. When we return, we'll get into an interview with one of the winners. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to LCS Academy. We just witnessed the match of Dig versus Immortals, and Dig getting a very, very convincing win there. And of course, we got to have a player interview ready, presented by Verizon Wireless. It is going to be Acadian joining us to break down what happened in that match.
Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. Hey, Acadian, can you hear us?
Yo, hello?
Hey, hello. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So going into today, we were having a little bit of hiccups, some sort of confidence checks with both Dig and Immortals, but you guys showed a very really assertive and defining win today. I want to touch just sort of on the dragon fight where you were able to get the smite steal away from Potluck. Could you walk us through sort of how the team approached that situation?
We weren't even really thinking about the dragon at that situation. We had already blown a lot of their ults, so Lorlo was just TPing in behind them, and we were just saying play for the fight. And nobody on their team blocked me from walking up to the Drake, so I just stole it as well, and we got the fight after. So yeah, that's what we were doing at the time.
Oh, not even worrying about the objective whatsoever, just going for kills. I love to hear it. And so, with sort of how the current stacking of the teams is for the academy, with a lot of tiebreakers and a very key point for 7th to 10th place, what's your current sights on sort of getting out of that situation, or are you sort of looking forward to facing off against other amateur teams in the tier 1 tournaments that are yet to come?
So after being in academy for this split and seeing what the amateur teams have the opportunity to do, which is like play many games, many live games, like real matches. They've played like 30 or something. Like some of my friends on Solo Fight have told me about how many games they've played as a team, and then we're sitting here in academy and we have like 6 now or 7 maybe that we've played as a team. I think, although it would like maybe look bad or something to get 7th through 10th, it's almost like good to go over and be able to play more matches. I would like it actually. I would like to be able to show off more and just like get more experience with the teams, or with our team too. But yeah, probably not gonna happen. We'll see.
Well, I think that's a great way to lead into sort of a follow-up question of going into tomorrow. You're going to be facing off against Evil Geniuses Academy, and with maybe going and fighting for a 7th or 8th place position, how's your confidence and how's sort of the team morale going into tomorrow now?
I mean, I don't think any of our team feels like it's unfortunate with best of ones, based on like how our scrims have been. I think we had like a little bit of a hiccup maybe like a month ago, 3 weeks ago, where we had to figure some stuff out as a team, but we've been kind of gelling more recently, I think. So I think our team's pretty confident, and yeah, just excited to play in general.
Yeah. Desrix, did you have any other questions? Maybe some pop-offs or hints to how to play Nidalee jungle?
Yeah, just give us your whole Nidalee guide right here, right now, if you don't mind. But no questions to be had. I want to thank you for your time, Acadian. And again, congratulations on your win. We are going to take a moment to throw it over a short break and get ready for the next game that we have in line, and that is going to be Team Liquid versus CLG. We will be right back with more of LCS Academy.